Our next performance is AU Player's production of Zeus Story by Edward Albee. This is a selection from the thought-provoking one-act play that features just two talented performers.
It's so unbelievable. I find it hard to believe that people such as that really are.
It's for reading, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Sometimes fact is better left to fiction. You're right, Pat. But the one that I wanted to tell you is about the dog, and I shall now.
Oh, well, yes, the dog. Oh.
You're not thinking of leaving, are you?
I don't think so.
Good. Because after I tell you about the dog, I'll tell you about what happened at the zoo.
You're full of stories, aren't you?
You don't have to listen. You know that, right? Nobody's holding you here. Remember that. Keep that in your mind.
I know that.
You do? Good. All right, the story of Jerry and the dog. What I'm about to tell you has something to do with how sometimes it's necessary to go a long distance out of your way in order to come back a short distance correctly. At least I think it has something to do with that. All right, the dog, I think I told you, is a black monster of a beast. He's with an oversized head, tiny, tiny ears and eyes, bloodshot, infected maybe, and a body you can see the ribs through the skin. He's all black, except for his bloodshot eyes. Those are red. And, oh yes, there's an open sore in his right paw. That's red too. And the poor monster, and I do believe he's an old dog. He's certainly a misused one. He almost always has an erection of sorts. That's red too. And what else? Oh yes, there's a gray, yellow, white color that shows whenever he bares his fangs at me. Like this. Grrr! Which he did the day I moved in. I worried about that animal the minute I met him. Now, I'm not like St. Francis and have birds hanging off me all the time. No, animals are indifferent to me, like people, most of the time. But he wasn't indifferent to me. He snarled and made to get one of my legs. Not like he was rabid, you know. He was a stumbly kind of dog, but he wasn't half-assed either. It was a good stumbly run. But I always got away. You can see here where he got me. The second day I lived there, you can see where my trouser leg is mended. But I tore free and I got upstairs and that was that. But this happened for about a week and a half. Whenever I went in, but never when I went out. That's funny. Really, it was funny. I could pack up and live on the streets for all the dog cared. So I started thinking about it when I got upstairs one day, and I decided, first, I'll kill the dog with kindness. And if that doesn't work, I'll just kill him. Oh, don't react, Pat, just listen. So the next day, I went out and I bought a pack of hamburgers, medium rare, no ketchup, no onions, and I threw the rolls out on the way home. When I got back to the rooming house, there he was, waiting for me. It figured. I went up to the door to the entrance hall, and I opened it, and there he was, waiting for me. I went in, very cautiously. I had the hamburgers, you remember? I opened the bag, and I placed the meat about 12 feet in front of where the beast was snarling at me. Like so. He snarled, stopped snarling, sniffed, moved slowly, then faster towards the meat. When he got to it, he turned to me, and I smiled. Tentatively, you understand? And then, he turned his face back towards the meat, and rah! He tore into it like that, like he'd never eaten anything in his life before except for, like, garbage. Which may have very well been the truth. I don't think the landlady eats anything but garbage. But he ate them all, almost all at once, making sounds in the back of his throat, like a woman. And then, when he'd finished eating the meat and the paper too, he looked at me, and he smiled. At least I think he smiled. I know cats do. It was a very gratifying few moments. Then, bam! He snarled and he made to get me. But he didn't get me this time either. So when I got upstairs, I started to think about the dog again. And to be truthful, I was offended. I was damn mad too. Those were perfectly good hamburgers with not enough pork in them to make them disgusting. I was offended. But I decided to try it for a few more days. If you think about it, this dog had what amounted to be an antipathy for me. And I wondered if I might have overcome this antipathy. So I tried it for 5 more days, but every day was exactly the same. Snarl, sniff, move, slowly, faster, stare, gobble, rah! Snarl, smile, bam! Now by this time, Columbia Avenue was strewn with hamburger rolls, and I was less offended than disgusted. So I decided to kill him. Oh, don't be so alarmed, Pat. I didn't succeed. So the next day, I went out and I bought only 1 hamburger and what I thought was a murderous portion of rat poison. When I bought the hamburger, I told the man not to bother with the roll. All I wanted was the meat. And I expected some sort of reaction like, "We don't sell no hamburgers without the rolls," or, "What are you gonna do, eat it out of your hands?" But no, he simply wrapped the meat up and he handed it to me, and he said, "A bite for your pussycat?" I wanted to tell him, "No, this is for a plan to poison a dog I know." But you can't say "a dog I know" without sounding funny. So I said to him, a bit too loudly and formally, I'm afraid, "Yes, a bite for my pussycat." People stopped. People looked up. That always happens when I try to simplify things. People look up. But that's neither hither nor thither. So on my way home, I kneaded the rat poison and the meat together with my bare hands, feeling as much sadness as disgust. When I got back to the rooming house, the beast was waiting to take my offering and then jump me. When I got back to the entrance hall, I opened the door, and I entered. And there he was, Malevolence, with an erection. I placed the poison patty down, and I made my way towards the stairs to watch. He gobbled up the meat, as usual, and then he smiled, which almost made me sick. He then jumped me, but I sprinted and I got upstairs as usual. And it came to pass that the beast was deathly ill. I knew this because he no longer attended to me, and because the landlady sobered up. She stopped me in the hall on the evening of the attempted murder and confided in me the information that God had struck her puppy dog a surely fatal blow. She had forgotten her bewildered lust, and her eyes were open, wide, for the first time. They looked like the dog's eyes. And she sniveled, and she implored me to pray for him. And I wanted to tell her, "But madam, I have myself to pray for, the colored queen, the Puerto Rican family, the person in the front room whom I've never met before, the woman behind the closed door who cries deliberately, and all people in all rooming houses everywhere. Besides, I don't even know how to pray." But, to simplify things, I told her I would pray. She looked up, and she said that I was a liar, and that I probably wanted the dog to die. And I told her, and there was so much truth here, Pat, that I didn't want the dog to die. I didn't, and not because I tried to kill him, but I'm afraid I must say I wanted the dog to live because I wanted to see what would come of our new relationship. Please understand, Pat, this sort of thing is important. Believe me, it is important. We need to understand the effect of our actions. Anyway, the dog regained his health, and I have no idea how, unless he was a descendant of the puppy dog that guarded the gates of hell, or some such resort. I'm not up on my mythology. Are you? At any rate, the dog regained his health, and the landlady regained her thirst, in no way altered by the Bow Wow's deliverance. And when I came back from a movie I'd watched on 42nd Street, one I'd seen, or very similar to one I'd seen, after the landlady told me that her puppykins was well again, I was so hoping to see the dog again. I was, what's the word? Enticed? No, that's not it. Fascinated? No, that's not it either. I was, heart-shatteringly anxious. That's it. I was heart-shatteringly anxious to see my friend again. Yes, Pat, friend. That's the only word for it. I was heart-shatteringly, etc., to see my puppy dog friend. When I got back to the rooming house, I opened the door into the entrance hall, and I entered unafraid. And there he was, staring at me. And I stared at him. And we stayed that way for quite some time, still, stone statue, just staring at each other. And I stared at him, and he stared at me I stared longer into his face than he did into mine. I mean, I can stare longer into a dog's face than a dog can into mine. Or anybody else's, for that matter. And for those 20 seconds to 2 hours, we connected. And here's what I wanted to happen. I love the dog now, and I wanted him to love me too. I had tried to love, and I had tried to kill, but both had been unsuccessful by themselves. And I hoped, and I don't know why I expected the dog to understand anything, much less my motivations, but I hoped that the dog would understand. It's just that if you can't deal with people, you have to make a start somewhere. With animals. If not with people, with something. With a bed, with a cockroach, with a mirror. No, that's too hard. That's one of the last steps. With a carpet, with a roll of toilet paper. No, not that either. That's a mirror too. Always check for bleeding. You see how hard it is to find things? With a street corner, with too many lights, all colors reflecting off the oily wet streets. With a wisp of smoke. With pornographic playing cards, with a small strongbox without a lock, with crying, with love, with vomiting, with fury because the pretty little ladies aren't pretty little ladies, with making money with your body because it's an act of love, and I could prove it, with howling because you're alive, and with God. How about that? With God, who is a colored queen who plucks his eyebrows and wears a kimono, who cries deliberately behind his closed door, with God, who I heard turn his back on the whole thing some time ago. And someday, with people. Just that. People.